Good Monday morning. It is May the 2nd, 2011. Scott Spears along with you on the exchange, joined by my good pals Charlie Evers, Marianne Michaels, and Fritz the Night Owl. And we're going to show you a face, a blast from the past here in just a second, who's got Marion ties, certainly ties to Upper Sandusky, and ties to Fritz the Night Owl. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that this week, sitting in as a guest host. Before we do any of that, though, we want to make sure to mention our sponsors, as the exchange is brought to you by the Ohio Neck and Back Pain Relief Center, Scott M. Gray, D.C., across from the Marion Center between TSC and Kroger. For further information, dial 740-386-6580. Night Owl Theater, located on the net at www.fritzlives.com. For further information, email nightowltv@yahoo.com. And that's NITEOWLTV@yahoo.com. And by Bucyrus Placemats. To put an ad in, call Wayne Flighter at 419-562-8473, located at 116 Wayne Avenue in Bucyrus, Ohio. You can get them on the net at www.bucyrusplacemats.com, and we certainly thank them all. As we do each and every day, we're going to start off this Monday by going to our good friend Charlie Evers for this day in history.
Well, a long time ago, a couple of years before I was born, Jack Benny began his radio series. That was 1932, Jack Benny. In 2003, President Bush made the famous statement, "Mission accomplished." He did that on the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln. That was 2003. But I think one of the most notable things, J. Fred Coots was born in 1897. You might say, J. Fred Coots, who's he? He wrote Santa Claus Is Coming to Town.
I know J. Fred Monk was the monkey on the Today Show.
Well, this guy wasn't a monkey.
No, was he named was J. Fred Monk named for him?
Yes.
He was?
Oh, yeah, he was.
Wonder
really.
why?
Because he wrote another song.
the monkey or the guy wrote another song?
Both of them.
And it all happened on May the 2nd.
Yes, at least.
We're going to move on as we do each and every day, because you know what? If you don't have plans tonight, I can give you something to do. Well, actually, I can't, but there's somebody who can. He's Fritz the Night Owl, and he's got our flick pick of the day. Fritz?
Thank you, Scott. Once we transcend the boundaries of time and space. I take you back to 1951. We had fun in 51. The movie was a Bob Hope movie, one of his best, called The Lemon Drop Kid. And again, it's a movie that holds up well even in the 21st century, even though it goes back to 1951. Kind of a Damon Runyon-esque kind of thing. Actually, Damon Runyon had something to do with the writing of this. And of course, there were a lot of these superb Damon Runyon type names in there, such as Straight Flush is the name of one of the characters. Gloomy Willie, typical Damon Runyon name. No Thumbs Charlie. How would you like to be known as No Thumbs Charlie? The Society Kid, Bird Lady, Singin' Sally, to name just a few. Anyway, in this particular movie, Bob Hope is down on his luck, fast-talking racetrack tout. And he makes the mistake of giving a bad tip to a heavyweight gangster who loses a lot of money on the kid's tip. So, of course, that sets up the premise for the whole film. Bob Hope has like a month to pay back this big gangster $10,000. And $10,000 in 1951 was heavy bread. So Hope doesn't, no way can he make $10,000 in a month unless he's extremely lucky. So the whole movie is essentially a big chase sequence between the gangster who says pay back the money or else, and of course we all know what or else means in a typical movie like this. A lot of laughs all the way through it. One of the most outstanding and unusual things about this movie is that this is the movie in which the Christmas song, Silver Bells, was introduced to the mass public. And Silver Bells, of course, since 1951 has been one of the standard favorite holiday songs of all time. Goes back to 1951, introduced by Bob Hope in The Lemon Drop Kid. One of Hope's very, very best pictures, and of course Bob Hope, there were tons of super Bob Hope comedies, this being one of them. Lemon Drop Kid, Damon Runyon, 1951. You get a lot of laughs out of it then, a lot of laughs out of it now. The Lemon Drop Kid.
There's never been a Bob Hope movie, whether it was the Road Pictures, whether it was the big broadcast of 1938, that I didn't like. They were sometimes hokey movies, but I loved Bob Hope movies. I love Bob Hope. Anything he did was great. Now the camera panned there over to Fritz, and it was a little bit of deja vu on the screen, because of course the man from Upper Sandusky and the man from who spent some time here in Marion, and of course at WBNS with Fritz, Dave Kaler's along with us today. That's a pleasure. Dave, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. This is cool.
Was it a little bit of deja vu hearing Fritz do a movie review there?
Just the minute he started out with that great voice of his, because when I went to Channel 10 in 1980, Fritz was, you're still working live booth then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we still had live booth announcers then, and so Fritz worked the night shift, and we were all there together when he started out there. But not only at the movie, when I was in college, I used to listen to him too in the Night Owl Theater.
I helped warp his mind when he was a child.
Yeah, he did a pretty good job at that too.
Now I thought, let's start this off. You guys worked together for 11 years. Fritz left in 91. Do you have a story about Dave, Fritz? Remembrances?
Dave was very, very well respected and well behaved. As far as I can't think of
Trying to get something.
any scandalous behavior on the part of Dave Kaler. We always had a good time together. Of course, he was working in the newsroom and I was in the booth. So we'd see each other when he would be taking a break, and we'd get together for coffee or before the show or after the show. No, Mr. Kaler's behavior was above reproach. I wish I really had a nice scandal to lay on you right now.
Yeah, I didn't. I was pretty straight laced. Of course, you had to be. I mean, you have to be. I mean, if you're in the public eye, you can't go around. Although a lot of people do today. I mean, and I think they probably always did. It's just we got the internet that and all these bloggers that this guy or this gal does this or that and the other thing. But no, I was I was born in a conservative family in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. I mean, Wyandotte County. You can't get more conservative than that. So.
Tell us about Fritz. What was it like working with him? How good was he at what he did?
Oh, he was fantastic. And every time that I went out, that was the first thing they'd say, "Do you ever see Fritz the Night Owl?" Because the theater was still going on at the Night Owl Theater was still going on. It was a great institution at the time, and he was fantastic. He'd stroll in the newsroom and go back and get some tapes, and then come back and go back to the women. He'd get some more audio tapes, and then he'd come back and they'd work on that.
That's right. Part of the job was I had to pre-record on audio tape all of the announcements that would run the next day, and if somebody was substituting for somebody on the news team, I would have to make like a new news intro saying, tonight sitting in for Dave Kaler is Bob Orr or something like that. And so I would, those studios were right in the corner of the newsroom, so I was schlepping tapes, audio carts back and forth and copy back and forth there to just read these things off and give them numbers and go through the procedure there.
They talk a lot about guys in newsrooms, ladies in newsrooms, kind of being the quirkiest guys at the station off the air. In your guys' tenure, 11 years there together, who was quirky? What about people like, who was Tom Ryan, Flippo the Clown?
Well, Flippo was on all the time. Tom was pretty straight-laced. Who was the sportscaster after Lee Velicities?
Clytenic. Stu Clytenic?
Stu, was he the one that would talk about "you can't date my daughter" on the air?
Oh no, that's Gary Radnich.
Gary Radnich.
Gary Radnich, and Gary is doing very, very well. He's made a name for himself in San Francisco. Works both television and radio. He does a radio 3-hour show in the morning, and then does the 6 and 11 o'clock sports at night. And you can stream him. I listen to him about 2 or 3 times a month on KNBR at 680.
Is he still as wild as?
And he still uses the same lines.
Okay.
And I wrote him an email about a year and a half ago. I said, "Gary, you're still using the same lines. Come on, get over this." But he's doing very, very well. Very, very popular. Has all the exclusive interviews with the Giants, the 49ers. He's very well entrenched in the community of San Francisco, and he's really, really done well. Yeah, Gary is. Yeah, I remember one story about Gary Radnich, and I think, I don't think you remember this, but he came in about month after he was there. He said, well, I should lead with Ohio State sports, but who cares about Ohio State? Now,
Right.
this is how sharp he was, all right? Who cares about Ohio State? Well, the phones rang off the hook. The sales manager's on his rear end the next day. I mean, the whole thing. But Gary knew in order, if he was gonna have to entrench Jimmy Crumb's audience somewhere, get some attention somewhere, and you worked with Jimmy.
Yes.
Get in, and he had to do something outlandish. And that's what he did, and that was the beginning at
You-
Channel 10.
You know, Dave, you're talking about him doing very well. There are quite a lot of men and women who were in the Columbus market that have gone
Yeah,
on
yeah.
to the networks.
Well,
I
Bob-
mean,
Bob Orr
Bob
was
Orr
one,
is one,
yes.
Aaron Moriarty.
The black girl who came from Worthington, she was like the
Dana?
new,
Dana
Dan,
Tyler.
Dana Tyler's
sure,
on
yes.
in New York City.
WCBS.
Yes. There's a lot more that you could
Oh, yeah.
mention that they have done quite well. So Columbus is a good market to start in, but it's not, you can't really get into Columbus right away. You have to
No,
even
no.
start at a smaller market.
Well, you used to.
Yeah.
Now.
Now
it's-
you can?
Now
Oh.
now you can, you can get in there right away with maybe only one station of call letters behind your name, where before you'd have to have, 3 or 4. And then from Columbus, you don't have to stop at Pittsburgh or Cleveland. Now you can go from Columbus to New York, or Columbus to Atlanta. Derek Blakely, went
Right,
to
and-
Chicago, yeah.
Then there was, the black newscaster, he was a weekend anchor, he went to DC. And I always liked his style, because if there was a glitch in the technique where a lot of people would look around, anchors would look around and, what's happening, he'd just sort of lay back and say, well, a little technical problem, we'll fix
Yeah.
it. And he would just lay back and wait for things to happen, and,
You're not talking about Leon Bibb, are you?
no.
No.
I can't
He
think.
went to
Leon went to
Cleveland.
Cleveland.
He went to Cleveland.
Still there.
I think he's still there on
Still
weekend.
on the air.
Yeah, I think so.
Channel 3.
One name I wanted to throw at you too, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention it, of course, is Joe Holbrook. What was Holbrook
Oh,
like?
yes.
Well, Joe gave me announcing lessons when I was the night switchboard operator. I started there in '54, and Bill Pepper thought I was one of the nighttime announcers that was sitting in on the switchboard. He couldn't figure out what I was doing there, and he came out and he introduced himself, and we got to talking. And then one thing led to another, because I was in pre-law at the time, and Bill Pepper and Joe Holbrook said, well, you ought to be in radio, TV, and then they would stay after their shows. They would stay after their shows, and they would actually give me announcing lessons.
We'll send this to Joe for not getting you into the law business, sending you into broadcasting. Dave, tell us about Joe.
Well, the thing I remember about Joe was his dry wit. I mean, Joe had, he was from down there in Scioto County, and he had that southeastern Ohio sense of humor, and really dry, and he was just the greatest. He's still going at it. He's got to be close to 80, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Or something like that now. And but the one thing I remember him the night we were doing some toss on the air, and I went over to him. This is when the anchors started moving around, and I go over there and I sit on his desk, and he said about the weather, such and such is coming. He says, but I have another problem. And I says, what's that, Joe? He says, you're sitting on my barometer. I mean, stuff like that's the humor of Joe Holbrook. I mean,
that's
Joe was
wonderful.
he's just, he was
Very
great.
laid back and very unflappable, although I did see him completely lose it one night, and that was when an announcer by the name of Don Riggs, who had to do the Shell oil commercials. Joe was doing his weather forecast, and Don Riggs goes out on the sound block, and he comes back in with just his shorts and his little Shell bow tie and his Shell hat on, and Joe was, doing something or other, and he turned around and he sees Riggs standing by the camera, and he just loses it, laughs. And
Joe,
of course, in those days, it was kind of like a game. It was all right to break up the newscaster or the booth announcer or
Well,
somebody.
people like that.
Yeah,
They
but
like to
now
watch
it became a no-no.
Oh,
Because there was one newscaster who made it his goal in life to break me up when I was doing the closing of the news. And he did accidentally the first time. He closed with this really bizarro, funny story. And then they flip it to me in the booth to close out the news, and I'm just laughing my can off. It was Lou Forrest. And so then Lou Forrest made it a challenge to find the most outrageous, funny stories just so he could make me laugh. And so upper management found no humor in this,
No.
and that's when we started to pre-record the opens and the closes.
I think Lou ended up somewhere overseas now. I think he's doing something.
Yeah, the last I heard, Louis, is, he's over in England and is in public relations for some small university or college
how
over
neat.
there, some,
He was with the Turner Classic News for a while, too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But in this business, you travel around a lot.
Boy, a lot of great names to come out of WBNS, the Columbus market. I mean,
Yes.
really,
Sure.
really. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you had some big names in the Cleveland and Cincinnati markets for sure, but Columbus certainly has been a hotbed over the years.
There were two women, I can't think of their names, that are both on networks too.
Well, Faith Daniels was one.
Yeah,
Faith, right.
Faith Daniels, but no.
At NBC.
There was somebody from Channel 6, I remember. I can't think of her name, but, I mean, you just can go down a whole list of people
A lot of people
who've
have
done well.
gone. We'll throw out a current event here. We have a little bit of time left on this Monday, May the 2nd. Last Friday, the royal wedding happened, and I thought the most interesting thing about this was, did you know on the carriage ride to the ceremony that there was somebody specifically given the task of being bullet catcher for Prince William? How would you like that job, Marianne? Bullet catcher.
Wow.
How do you sign up for that?
I don't know.
Well, here's the other thing about it. Kate didn't have one. Kate doesn't have a bullet catcher.
What exactly is a bullet catcher? You mean an actual from a gun? Is that what you're talking about, or is this something
I don't know what else bullets come from. I'm going to say bullets from a gun, Marianne. Charlie, what do you think of a bullet catcher?
Yes, I'm sure if you don't wear armor, then you have to have a human bullet catcher.
Wow.
That's what he is.
Would you be willing to do it, though?
For a price.
Really?
Well, the guy that, when Reagan was shot, I forget, the guy that got, the Secret Service man that got shot, they've named, I believe, a law after him. He's still, I think, paralyzed in
Oh,
a bad
yes,
shape.
that's,
What was his
Ba-
name?
Baker?
yes.
Yeah.
He still has a speech problem.
Right.
Right.
But it's an interesting thing. Did everybody get into the royal wedding stuff? Because I remember when Diana
Diana.
married, that people got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to watch this. I don't really think the buildup has been.
Oh, I
mean,
think
it's there.
I think it's
but-
been huge. I think every magazine, every newscast, I think it's all over the place. I find that I'm not that much interested in it.
No, I think
That's
that's
me.
it. I think that's it.
me.
Dave, don't you think that people might have been more interested in the early 80s when Diana married Charles than this thing?
Yeah, probably that was when, 1981, 82,
Early,
83, something
early.
like that, 81. Maybe so, but I think part of the interest there is from the standpoint that they weren't deluged with all this other information. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have
Yes.
any of that where you get all this information day in and day out. I mean, from the day that they were engaged, then you got all these stories building, and so by the time it comes, it's not that big a deal. And at that time, for the networks to cover it, such as ABC, NBC, and CBS were the only three at that time, I think that, they put all of their resources into that situation. The internet's changed a great deal about how people look at things, and you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning if you want to see it live, right? But chances are somebody's going to stream it on an internet. So you come home in the afternoon, you go
See
to
it.
work. You don't want to watch Friday night television or something, so you turn it on, or you put on your DVR. I do think it's quite unique because nobody does it like the Brits.
Oh.
That's
Uh,
true.
They really do, in keeping their tradition, and we kind of laugh at that tradition, but, each country has a huge tradition, and that is, the monarchy is big, although it's not as powerful naturally as it was.
What do you think the internet in general, because we're right on the heels of the Obama birther scandal, we're on the heels of the royal wedding, a lot of things going on that people used to have to sit down and know the facts on and pay attention to, but you can start something on the internet and bam, it's everywhere.
And a lot of it is false. That's what is
yeah.
sad. I mean, there are out and out lies put over the internet about various politicians, and I think and people accept it as truth.
But do you believe, here's the problem I have, and this is just, I'm not going to name any news source, but it was not an internet news source, but when the Obama birther thing was going on, and President Obama finally showed his birth certificate last week, there was a news source, not internet, saying, well, now is this enough, essentially, to believe that he is president? I don't think that a news organization would have asked that. I think the news organizations themselves on television, newspapers, radios, are not as into the truth as maybe they were 25, 30 years ago. What do you think, Fritz?
Oh, I think that the networks and the reliable sources are still as much into the truth as they were.
Sure.
It
I
would
do
be
too.
against their interests for them to be caught in a purposely untrue story. That is one that they knew was untrue, and they reported it anyway. I think that one of the advantages that people do have is the fact that there is the reliability and the trustworthiness of the people who have made that step into network and local news. I mean, to throw out a name, I mean, people knew Dave Kaler. They knew what he stood for. They knew he was a member of the band. They knew where he lived. They knew he was a nice guy. They knew Chet Long. They knew Joe Holbrook. And there was a degree of trust that came along with that the performer didn't betray, and the audience felt confident that if Dave Kaler said this is what happened, that Dave had checked it out as far as it could be checked out, and that as far as he was able to determine, that was the way it was.
Well, let me dial this back for
And
a
I think
second.
the audience accepts that.
Well, I guess what I wanted to say there was, just because it's on television, it's fact. I'm talking, people will tell you Fox News, MSNBC, that's the news. Do you believe that is 100% honest and correct all the time?
Well, there are certain programs on both of them that are strictly news.
Sure, but I mean,
But then there are commentators, who comment, and that's
But-
totally different. I mean, but if you are a reporter, it is your duty to tell the facts and facts only. And if you give your opinion, then I think that you could be fired, couldn't
I
you?
think that in a way that even a legit reporter, if he's got a preconceived agenda, can give you the facts, but maybe leave out some
Certain things.
relative
Yeah.
things that would change the color or the tone or the thrust of the story. They're still telling you the truth, but it ain't the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God.
well, I think that's the difference now. I think there were news organizations that prided themselves in being the news. The networks are called Fox News, MSNBC News. They call themselves that, and they don't come on at 9 o'clock, either one of them, and say, this is opinion, these are commentators. They bask it in the news, that this is the news. Don't you think so, Dave?
Here's the problem. First of all, there's two answers to that question. Number one, when you talk about MSNBC, Fox, you talk about one having their form of news, Fox News having their form of news. The bottom line is you had that historically in newspapers. The Dispatch was conservative, the Citizen Journal was somewhat liberal. So about having it, but the media having agendas, I don't think that's the issue. The issue is they have so much time to fill. And when they have so much time to fill, and, they're starting to report rumors, which we never did, right, Fritz?
Right.
Rumors were never, you couldn't even report, you heard something on the police radios that say there's a wreck at 95 and 98, or here in Marion, or something like that. You had to call them to find out whether, you couldn't go on the air and say, well, according to police radios, this is what we have going. That wasn't the case. Well, now they do all of that, and now they do it with pictures. You're feeding a beast that's 24 hours of just, they have so much time to fill. I agree with Mary Ann. The news shows on MSNBC and Fox are basically news. But then you get into Hannity and Combs, or you get into Keith Olbermann, you get into all that other
Right.
aspect of that. Then it becomes something else, and I don't pay much attention to whether it's opinion to me. So, I mean, it's just like the editorial pages or the op-ed pages.
Yes.
It doesn't affect me that they're not legit. I think they are. I think they all want to get it,
I guess that's not the one that I'm having the trouble with, is the big primetime whopper opinion shows. I think it's sometimes the morning programs on these cable networks, I think sometimes skew a little bit to their own agenda more than the Today Show or CBS Early Show or Good Morning America might.
But see, I don't look at them as news shows.
But I think people do. I think that's,
And right now, in our society, in our lifetime of what we're doing right now, those morning shows are nothing more than radio on TV. They're not a sit-down newscast anymore. In fact, probably the only sit-down newscast left is 11 o'clock at night. Our lifestyles, we're doing something, we're moving, we're getting kids ready for soccer, church, synagogue, whatever activities, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, we got all this stuff going on, you know, and so I never looked at the Today Show as being a news show. I mean, you know, J. Fred Muggs with, you know, Dave
No.
Garraway back in the 50s. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
it was never, they had the news segment
Right.
that they read the news, but then there's all this news you need to know stuff,
It's-
which
it-
I
it's-
really don't know if I need to know it or not.
Well, I think you're right, and that's a time to fill thing too. Well, the morning shows always had more time than the network
Oh,
news,
of
but
course.
look at the people who've graduated from the morning shows to the
Sure.
network news. Charles Gibson, Diane Sawyer, Katie Couric, and there's stuff to talk about there. This Monday, the time is up. We want to let you know if you want to get in touch with us, you can do that on Facebook under The Exchange Marion. Charlie, you'll be allowed to talk tomorrow, I think.
Oh,
You'll be in on the
okay.
conversation. Sorry. Dave will be back with us tomorrow. We'll see you on Tuesday.